this is Meg from Innovid. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Innovid TV. Today we have an exciting conversation about how advertisers are adapting their mix, creative, and measurement strategies for the world of Converged TV today. Innovid's VP of Product Marketing, Laura Foster, joins Christine Kim, Senior Director, Consumer Media from NFL, and David Cooperstein, the founder of Figure, on behalf of Ascendant Networks, to discuss. David, take it away.
So thank you, Meg. Really pleased to be here to talk about the report that we at the Ascendant Network did in partnership with Innovid. The topic of the report was Converged TV and how brands are thinking about the explosive growth of this new medium or converged medium. For the purposes of this webinar and the way the industry is starting to define Converged TV, it is the convergence of linear, connected TV and streaming, and digital video, whether it's viewed on a desktop, a mobile device, or a tablet. According to the IAB, digital video, including CTV and streaming, is the largest segment of the advertising landscape today. Only video/TV and search are the ones that grow. Everything else, if you think about the broader advertising landscape, it's actually shrinking, and only these segments are the ones that are growing. What we did for this report was interview 100 people, many of whom were brand marketers. 78% of them were marketing VPs or higher. 55% of them had over 1,000 employees. 50% of them were brand advertisers. And what we did with the audience was do a combination of qualitative surveys and then quantitative research to understand where they were at back in November of 2022. So just to give you a little a sense of time for when we did this research. The streaming market continues to evolve, grow, and change, as we can all attest to. There's many deals that have happened since November, so just keep that in mind relative to the data. But I think the important thing is that these are people with very large media budgets, and they are making the shift to thinking about converged TV, not the individual silos within video. The top things that we learned when we were doing this research were really interesting. So the first was that converged TV brings the best of digital video and traditional linear TV together. Particularly connected TV does a lot to bring together what's great about digital, which is the targeting and the ability to buy on programmatically with the big screen experience. So really important that Converged TV brings together the whole landscape, and particularly because of streaming. Linear, however, does retain its role as king of reach. And so as we talk about this topic, there's a lot of focus on linear TV because it is still the place where you can reach the most people for the best price. Unified measurement is a goal, but it's certainly not something that we've landed on yet. There's still a lot of work to be done in measurement. And the last thing I'll say here is that creative strategies still do preference a 30-second spot that starts with a linear TV ad driving a lot of the creative in the market. Very surprising to us. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into some of the questions. But it is really important to remember that while the market is shifting in terms of what can be done, the ways in which they are approached is still somewhat traditional, but moving very quickly. What I'd like to get started with now is asking our two panelists to introduce themselves. And when you introduce yourselves, can you also state what your personal viewing mix is? Are you a streamer full-time? Do you still adhere to linear TV? Obviously, Christine, you'll talk extensively about this since given your role. But just talk a little bit about where you tend to consume video as part of your introduction. Laura, do you want to go first?
I would love to. I hope I'm not going to break Christine's heart by saying that I am all in on streaming 100%. I believe I have access to set up cable through my HOA. I have owned my condo for years. I have never done that. I am entirely a streaming household. My name is Laura Foster. I run product marketing at Innovid across all of our lines of business, go-to-market strategy, as well as sales enablement for our internal teams. And I live and breathe CTV both at home and at work, which, is a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you think about it.
Christine, you want to give us a little insight into you and your viewing habits?
Sure. Hello, I'm Christine Kim at the NFL, Senior Director of Consumer Media. What that basically means is the NFL has about 30 plus marketing campaigns throughout the year. Most of them are within the regular season. They range from brand campaigns to cause-related campaigns to increase perception of fans, or it could be the other spectrum of direct response campaigns, such as driving subscriptions to NFL Plus or a streaming service. With that said, I manage kind of the planning of earned, owned, and paid media, in addition to focus also on paid media planning and buying as well. As for my viewing habits, I was smirking because I'm probably turning more and more the minority in this sense. I am what I self-proclaimed cord forever. I have cable subscriptions with the sports package that I happily pay for, which could mean why I don't own a house now, but I pay for at my mom's house in addition to my own. It is not exactly cheap, but I'm a massive sports fan, not just with the NFL, but with other sports. And I am holding on to my cord for as long as I can, because I cannot deal with the delay that I'm sure is intentional with streaming versus linear. So if I happen to second screen and have my mobile phone on Twitter, I do not want a spoiler versus what I see on TV. So as a result, I get really awesome perks. Like I used to get free Sunday ticket from DirecTV for my loyalty. But yes, I would say, with all that said, I'm a huge sports is probably 80 to 90% of the content that I consume. The 10% is I do have other content subscription products as well, so I'm not fully kind of cord forever. I would say that's about 10% for anything that is not sports programming, such as like on Netflix, Prime, Disney, etc. In addition, I do use other products, streaming products, if I'm trying to watch more than one game at a time, or more than one sport. So in that sense, yes, big consumer of content wherever you can get it, but focus on the linear side because of my love for sports.
And just so the audience knows, I probably refer to you as CK quite a bit, so if that's okay. But CK,
I always say I don't work CK or Christine. I am sure I've been called worse in any event.
we could probably call you a new segment, which is a Converged TV viewer.
Perfect.
You're not divided by channels either. You're a viewer holistically. So Christine or CK, first question I wanted to ask you was that you fulfill two roles in this webinar, because you're part of a media property at the NFL, as well as a buyer of media to drive viewership. So before we get into the second part, which is the buying of media, can you tell us a little bit about how the NFL is changing in terms of how people view the games? I mean, you said you watch sports on linear, but I think there's some changes in the way the NFL is distributing their content.
Absolutely. So it's no secret if you follow any of the trades or are an active fan of Nielsen data for the NFL, similar to other live sports, linear TV is still a key driver of viewership. When I first joined, I had assumed it'd be streaming first, but I was surprised to see that I am not alone on the linear TV viewership of sports. However, on the other side, digital streaming has been growing, especially as of the last few years. As evidenced with this past season's Thursday Night Football franchise's first exclusive year of our Amazon Prime Video partnership, I think it was reported to have on average 9.6 million average viewers per game, which is incredible. So seeing those numbers, data doesn't lie, makes me believe, okay, well, linear is still kind of at the top, but you know, it's very smart of our kind of business development team and our strategy team to start to invest in the future and the current with having a great deal with Amazon for the Thursday Night Football franchise. Previously, it was on Fox and also broadcasted on NFL Network as what we call a TriCast.
YouTube bought the Sunday ticket, right?
Yes, you are. Yes, that's correct. So in addition to that, that made me think about, it's been really also exciting to experience the evolution firsthand with even more offerings of recent with not just YouTube TV deal with Sunday's Ticket. And for those who aren't aware of that, Sunday Ticket is basically a package of NFL games that are out of market. So you can watch your in-market games on linear or on NFL Plus, which is the NFL's new subscription product, or with Sunday Ticket is the rest of the games, any out-of-market games. Previously, that Sunday Ticket package was with DirecTV since 1994, and this upcoming season is where I think it's a 7-year deal with YouTube TV taking reins of that deal. So those indicators of Amazon Prime Video with Thursday Night Football, in addition to the NFL launching our own live mobile game streaming product, NFL Plus, and the YouTube TV offering, all happening kind of in the last two-ish years, is definitely indicative that we definitely are, I guess, trying to be future-proofing of ourselves and migrate more of the viewership to where people are consuming content, which is less and less linear less and less linear as time will progress.
And Laura, how is these changes to the TV landscape, the different distribution models, the different ways to reach customers? How have your customers reacted to that? And what are some of the biggest eye openers as this shift is happening in real time as we're sort of talking today?
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of all of it is the conversation used to be, if we buy CTV, how? And now it's really how. So when I look back to the conversations I was having in 2020 and pre-2020, it was a lot of 101. It was, okay, what is CTV? I keep hearing this acronym. Should we be investing there? We keep hearing audiences that are going there, but we don't really have any data to support that. It's kind of anecdotal. And now the conversations we're having around CTV are much more mature. We know what CTV is. We know we need to buy there. How much should we buy? How do we understand that buy as it relates to our linear buy, which we're going to continue? What can we do within the CTV space that's more unique that maybe we couldn't do with linear? And how overall should we measure our success? And when I think about a lot of the reasons behind that, it comes down to just something really fundamentally simple. Advertisers, just like all of us, had to completely rethink the way they've handled most things in their life since 2020, right? They had to change their strategies to ensure that they were not only reaching, but also engaging their audiences. And these were audiences that were suddenly no longer bound by time or by platform or by device. And so I'll caveat this next bit by saying that the word fragmentation, like when I hear it, my brain just shuts off. I think it's the most overused term in ad tech and in tech in general right now. But I also think it comes with this negative connotation. Fragmentation is bad. And my view is that the opportunities that fragmentation have brought have given us a real chance to make changes that we've needed to make for a really long time. We know we've had not the best solutions. We know we've had siloed solutions, and fragmentation is just making that pain worse and making us, need to move to real solutions. On the other end, it's really opened up TV to a lot of different advertisers, a different range of brands that maybe couldn't invest on linear or didn't have the budget to invest on linear in the past. So in terms of size, we're seeing larger companies absolutely still investing on linear, but smaller organizations, less than 10,000 employees, are allocating up to 60% of their budget for digital video now, which means they're getting to dip their toes into that TV universe and start to play with that and test and learn in that space. The biggest eye-opener to me has been how quickly people have adopted this agile mindset. When I used to be a planner, whenever we would plan for an upcoming event, we would kind of take a plan off the shelf and then change a couple things in the plan, right? It's been really hard to do that over the past couple of years. And so a lot of the TV strategies that we're seeing now for lack of a better term, have become these living and breathing entities. And that has brought the ability and the need to optimize in real time to ensure that you're not only getting the reach, but that you're minimizing the overlap and driving performance right there in the moment, which I think is a good thing for the entire industry versus something that is bad or scary.
Also, like that, those words are not words that usually came out of traditional linear media buyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, we bought all this inventory. What do we do with it? Not let's make some changes at the last minute to our campaign, which is much more of a digital way of thinking.
Yeah.
Well, so what you said was not surprisingly in the research we found that 70% of respondents have increased their CTV budget in the last 12 months. Half of those, so 35% or roughly 35%, increased their budget significantly. So they are moving money. Although, like you said, like big companies are still learning how to move the money. Small companies are much more all in on investing early. There's a lot of dollars flowing in there. In fact, two of the people that we interviewed for the report had really interesting things to say. One of them worked for a beauty brand, and they actually originally pulled their CTV budget from their digital spend. They were only spending in digital, and now they're reconsidering linear because of what they experienced in CTV and the big screen and getting response that was very different than what they had gotten in the past. So they're looking at it as their move into upper funnel, where they had previously been much more in digital video only. And the other is that one other brand that we talked to, this is from a financial service firm, said that the linear ratings challenge became significant, and that's why they started making the switch. Not that it's going away altogether, we've talked about, but that there is a reason to make the switch. So, CK, how do you weigh the decision to advertise in your media buying role? How do you weigh the reasons to advertise across a converged landscape? And is your buying decision on linear versus CTV versus digital coordinated? Like, do you think of it as a big pool, or do you think of it in the individual chunks today? To the fragmentation point that we're talking about.
Got it. I would like to say it depends, but I'll just give some examples. So for us, it does depend on the campaign and the role of the channel. So I'll give a few examples that I thought of. So for instance, a media plan for driving tune-in on NFL Network would involve more of a linear TV buy. So it could be an addressable buy or some sports clusters if budget allows. So the thought there is fish where the fish are if we're driving tune in on a linear network. However, even with that said, we have seen some recent successes dipping our toe into more of kind of like a converged buy. So we would buy, do a linear TV buy on viewers who have NFL Network that watch a similar type of programming, in addition to tying that into a digital buy of, okay, there's like a DSP that has a similar type of user info, so we can try to hit the users with not just when they're watching TV, but also using that same kind of user data to make sure that we can hit the user on digital platforms and mobile devices as well. So that's kind of one where we would historically say, okay, linear always does well with complementing with other digital tactics based off of what funnel we're investing in for the plan. But now it is exciting to see that we are also evolving with seeing more of that kind of converged type of buy, just because we're seeing more kind of activity and effective reach on with a combination of linear and digital. Another example is for a campaign like driving mass reach for a cause-related spot or a brand spot. We typically get some inventory in our from our network partners through licensing deals. So in that case, we might consider CTV as a complement to the linear inventory we get, again, just to make sure that we can reach incremental users, especially if our target audiences aren't really on linear, i.e. they could be a little bit younger or a cord cutter type of audience. So in that sense, and that type of campaign, CTV might be the better choice for indexing higher and still with effective reach.
Great, thanks. And Laura, on the marketing side, it seems like they're discovering this digital benefit. And you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but they seem to like the idea of being able to act more quickly. What would you say are the top trends in their approach to media buying? And do advertisers tend towards the channel-specific approach that we were sort of alluding to here, or are they looking at this holistically?
Yeah. Building off what CK, I'm going to use your nickname now, was kind of saying there, I think it totally depends on the support model they have in place. So if they are a large organization that is very comfortable making buys entirely themselves and, isn't getting support from a holding group or an independent agency, you're going to see a different mix. But the reality is, I think more often than we'd like to admit, we get stuck in these weird kind of nonsensical silos. As I was reviewing the report, I really found it refreshing and frankly borderline shocking that 80% of respondents said that they're buying Converged media through a single team. I was like, that's awesome. And obviously we can chalk some of that up to the Ascendant audience just being a mature audience that is comfortable buying TV and has been buying TV for years, but I was like, wow. And what I think that is it really speaks to the movement of convergence. Like CK said, I don't believe there's a perfect mix, and I don't believe there's a perfect mix based on advertiser or vertical or industry. I think the perfect mix is the mix you can optimize in real time. Because guess what? The world changed a lot 3 years ago, and I don't think we're done. I think it's going to continue to evolve and change. So it's really my firm belief that to thrive in a converged TV space, you're going to have to start thinking about this more holistically. You're going to have to start thinking about buying not by channel, but across channels, converged. Testing and learning has to become the norm in this. And if you've ever experienced the joy, I'll say, of explaining and then having to execute a mid-flight campaign optimization, it's a lot easier to achieve when you're working with one team instead of siloed teams across an organization.
And the other thing that we've been talking a little bit about the convergence, but I would like to talk a little bit more specifically about streaming for a minute and the connected TV part of this. When we did the research, audience targeting scored far and away the #1 reason why people are moving to streaming. What do each of you think is the reason why CTV is doing so well with marketers? Do you think it's audience targeting alone? Do you think there's other factors that are part of that discussion? And as CK, you've said, linear is still a part of the mix, and we certainly have heard that from a number of different of the brands that we spoke to during the research. So do you think that audience targeting is the #1, or do you think there's some other benefits that come along with it?
I'll hop in. I think audience targeting and also just the ability to layer on things like contextual. One example is for our big Super Bowl brand spot. It was great to be able to do like a long, non-skippable Hulu buy where we could contextually target against content that goes against our various target audiences, whether it's teens or moms or sports fans. Like there's these kind of distinct segments in addition to, you can audience target on other, I guess, more interest related in addition to contextual. So seemed kind of marketing 101, but I think that kind of flexibility, similar to what we see outside of or in normal digital, I guess, I haven't seen thus far to be that nimble and easily to be turned around with linear. So I think that's been kind of great to see.
That's huge, right? It's an opportunity also to just be more creative in the space, and when you know exactly the genre or the content of what you're up against, literally up against in the slot, you can have more fun creatively. So I definitely hope we see more of that. I think my answer is really just it's about digital, right? Digital allows for adaptability. CTV allows you to make a real-time change. You can make a creative swap in mere minutes from the comfort of your couch. Like it is not hard to optimize in real time with CTV. With linear, it's a little bit more difficult. I also think the buying models of CTV, once you learn them, it's easy to buy programmatically. That's why programmatic exists, and that's why we're seeing more of the linear space sort of adopt the programmatic buying model, because it is so desirable to buyers. And then finally, measurability. I think digital, because of its real-time nature, because of its data nature, it's easier to measure than linear in a lot of cases, and the results you get are more census level versus panel based. And so I think that's attractive to a lot of people who have grown up their entire lives with Nielsen ratings and want to see more real-time data from a larger representative audience.
That reminded me that like one benefit, it seems minor, but it's like so huge, at least for me, and gets me excited, is the turnaround time for reporting is so much quicker. Where you can get reporting pretty much next day, or in the normal kind of digital SLAs, where with linear you'll have to wait, at least 5 business days for the logs to turn around and such. So again, at the least, that's refreshing, and just one less thing I have to think about. And the last thing that just hearing you speak, Laura, that inspired my thought was the rise of fast channels is also really interesting. So if I remember this correctly, free ad-supported TV. And so there's been a rise of that and viewership. As at first I feel like it's kind of cord cutters, and now it's like rise of fast is increasing as well. So as a marketer, that's been exciting to see again, being able to live through the evolution of that and see how kind of different ad formats evolve and the type of targeting and offerings, again, with the huge benefit of quick reporting as well.
And you're also learning that consumers do value, there's a value that they place on not paying for TV but getting the ads as the payment. That clearly advertising is something they're willing to accept with the rise of fast, for sure. But you both mentioned the M word, measurement. And when we did the survey, it was sort of a mixed bag of what people were doing. Some were using different measurement per channel, 30% were using different measurement per channel. Some were using in-house tools, less than 20%, but they were using in-house tools for measurement. Another 25% were using a mix of internal and third-party tools for measurement. There was no consistency with how marketers that we talked to were measuring. And we are relatively new in thinking about all 3 of these things as a single converged landscape. But Laura, is measurement something that marketers want to see revised, or are they happy sort of just central media team, lots of different measurement tools, and then they all talk to each other to make sure they're measuring the right things? Or how is that working for you?
I think you can answer that one right off of human nature. Do you want to talk to 45 teams to get an answer? No, you're probably going to get 45 different answers, right? But I want to answer this question in 2 parts, because I think both are super important and they kind of touch each other. So I think if you talk to any advertiser, big, small, verticals, even buy side, sell side, there's a consensus that having a holistic, unified view of converged TV is critical. But everybody is kind of work in progress on that, right? I think in the report, it was 18% of respondents said they used just one measurement partner across linear, CTV, and digital video. Which we have to then assume is the majority is using like a hodgepodge of like some reporting from a publisher, some reporting in-house, maybe some reporting from a DSP, which means there's a poor person on the back end running around trying to reconcile all of these different reports. I used to be one of those people. It's not a fun job. The other thing that's critical to remember is when you're trying to reconcile all of those reports, even if the metric is the same on the report, doesn't mean the methodology behind it is. So reconciling what is an impression to another, not always the exact same, which, I even hesitate to say that because I think someone is literally rolling over dying right now. What's interesting is that despite the diversity in the way measurement is being done, what is being measured is consistently the same. So I think it was 45% are measuring the same KPI across linear, CTV, and digital. So what's really interesting to me is, we're seeing the convergence of KPIs without a convergence of infrastructure, which makes my sort of like data cleanliness red flag go up. Like all the same KPI, none of the same measurement for that KPI. That's a little scary. Second part of your question, are we moving towards multi-currency? Yes, absolutely. And I truly believe that is exactly right. Right now, I think currency is the #1 buzzword as it relates to TV, fairly or unfairly, kind of depending on the day. I think what advertisers really want is so much more than currency. They want to be able to transact on multiple different KPIs for TV, which is the whole consensus behind currency. But they want the flexibility and freedom to change those KPIs in real time. If you talk to any major advertiser, they might have a North Star KPI, but then all of their individual campaigns have different KPIs. And that's how it's always been. It's just for TV, it was kind of always measured with reach, right? And we're so much more than reach on TV now. We're overlap. And even when you talk to sell side individuals, they're looking at overlap. They want to understand their total audience. So I feel like currency is such a myopic conversation that's yielding a lot of like what I call like dual press releases right now. And I think if we take a step back and really think about what we actually want, what we want is a measurement that is unified, that is clean, comparable, and consistent, and that allows for change so that you can, as you need to, switch up your strategy and you don't get stuck in one silo with one provider, one platform, one publisher, etc.
So CK, is that an easy thing for you to apply to the NFL, or is that a dream list for you to be able to do everything in one? Have all the KPIs match and the methodologies be consistent?
My answer to all of these questions is it depends. Oh gosh, yeah, this one I will do my best to give my opposite of TLDR thoughts about this, because it's something it drives me nuts, but it's a beauty at the same time. So I am trying not to say that fragmentation word, because we literally, now it's called AK silos of measurement is definitely challenging, but also an opportunity. So such as even with like the same measurement partner, such as like Samba TV or Nielsen, there doesn't mean that all the measurement methodologies across platforms are exactly the same. So they might kind of be the engine behind, I guess they're like the same engine, but different car models, for instance. So, that made me think, okay, well, we cannot compare each channel or partners within a specific channel the same. It is not going to be an apples to apples or even an apples to oranges. There's the methodology of like what they consider a control group is very different, or the type of test, like what a multi-cell test actually is, differs. So the list goes on. So I guess that doesn't mean we're not measuring at all, or say, okay, we can't compare each individual platform against each other, and therefore this is not going to be helpful for my media mix assessment. Like that was kind of my ingoing approach towards it, in addition to utter frustration. But then I turned that into an opportunity of, okay, well, to kind of lean into Laura's earlier point, agree that not all fragmentation is bad. Like, let's try to find the beauty of it, right? So we've learned to kind of try to evolve with the times and find the value and learnings of each channel uniquely, versus assuming a one-size-fits-all solution will allow us to assess the value of each channel against our media mix. So I guess overall, we're probably still assessing media mix based off of more kind of, non kind of TV measurement, for instance, or converged TV measurement all-in-one tools, but rather thinking about within each measurement solution that is provided, what are kind of bespoke learnings that we can learn about each individual channel versus, getting a learning about, I guess, all the channels. So that discouragement has turned into an opportunity. But yes, I would love for there to be some kind of all-in-one, because it is great when you can measure them against each other. But then the added challenge of you can have great measurement, even that hits 3 out of 4 of your channels. However, if the marketing results say something and the business results say something else, now that's a conversation for adult beverages, but that's where, there's challenges there, but you can only, that's the kind of the art part of media planning that is less popular in my science skewed brain, but fortunately, our company and organizations I work for is understanding of, okay, just because your media measurement said one thing and the business results said the other thing doesn't mean, we're not giving you any more budget. Like, it's not supposed to be an exact kind of parallel path, but hopefully for the right, it's typically directionally correct or on the same path for at least most.
Right, and it's so you can follow people in every single thing that they do. There's really no way to perfectly measure everything consistently. Makes sense, yeah. So the last question before we close, I just wanted to ask about creative. And creative is a very interesting element in this world. I've worked a little bit in the creative space. I think we've all had our exposure to the agency presenting the ad and whether that ad actually works in the fragmented number of channels that and ways to go to market that we now have. I mentioned earlier that somebody had taken their digital budget and divided that and took a piece of their digital budget to put into CTV. They had the interesting case where their agency would present a 30-second spot, even though they were doing no linear TV, to define their digital campaign. And now, luckily for them, that was the way they were approaching it. So they actually had a creative piece to put onto the big screen when they went back to using CTV as a way to test the channel. So the fact that marketers are still starting with a linear TV ad is interesting because you're talking about taking one piece of creative and putting it into all these fragmented distribution channels. Laura, do you see people actually starting to change? I mean, people were pretty honest about admitting that they're starting with the old way of doing things. Is a 30-second spot still what people say, let's start here and figure out what to do with it? Or are people thinking about audience-specific messaging and audience-specific creative?
I started my career as an art director writing, none of them were picked, spots for the Super Bowl. So I can tell you with firsthand knowledge, you start with a TV spot because it becomes kind of the anthem for the campaign. But I don't think I ever received a brief that said a linear TV spot. It was just a TV spot. So I don't really see the difference. I think starting with a 30-second spot is the thing people start with, because when you think about a creative idea, you think about the 30-second spot. You think about the hero spot, they call it at the agency. At the brand, it's the hero, right? It's the video. It's usually called the hero right there in the name. So I think the power of the big screen is, well, like, too powerful, frankly. No one can get over that allure. But I do think in the future, the brief for the creative team might evolve. Different KPIs and different audiences may garner the need to not start with a 30 and start with a 7 or start with a 5. But at the end of the day, nobody from a consumer standpoint, from a human standpoint, goes, did you see that great 30-second spot? No, they say, did you see that YouTube pre-roll? They don't even say that. They said, you see that YouTube spot? Like, no one really thinks about the length. It doesn't matter. I think the beauty of Converged TV, and specifically as more TV starts to go quote unquote digital, which I would just say delivered over the internet versus maybe over the airwaves, right? Is that we're elevating the creative, we're making it more relevant, to Christine's point before, contextually, we're making it more engaging, and we actually have an opportunity for the first time to make it add to the viewing experience versus distract from it. So that's really exciting to me. I'm a big believer in that advertising keeps the internet open and free to all so that everybody globally can have the same access to education and content. And I think anytime we think about advertising keeping something free, that's a good thing. And if we can make that advertising experience more relevant, more engaging, more fun, and less disruptive, everybody wins across the board.
I mean, one thing that I'll mention before I turn over to CK is that in the creative process, there's been a lot of work on attention and when you actually give the brand message. And in a 30-second spot, you build to a brand message. And in a digital spot, you sort of have to throw it out there and then sort of tell the story that goes behind the brand. Otherwise, people don't stick around long enough. So it's a little bit of a different, even a 30-second idea, let's call it the 30-second idea for lack of a better term for it. If it's a 30-second story, how does that story work in different media? I think still has to be figured out. CK, what do you lean on? Do you lean on multiple types of creative for the different audiences you're going after, or do you try to take one story and figure out how to slightly modify it to deal with the different audiences you're reaching?
As you probably can expect, we do both. So,
it depends. Here we go.
Yeah, we do both. A lot of our kind of big priority tentpole, I will echo everything Laura said, anthemic hero spots are for kind of our bigger events like kickoff, Super Bowl, playoffs, etc. Those are kind of such bigger events that we need, despite our target audiences perhaps being a bit younger, etc. As I alluded to earlier, the biggest audience is going to be on linear, and so that's sort of the starting point. If our audiences for growing our fan base happens to be a younger audience, where if you've looked at average watch times by quartile, are not exactly watching all 30 seconds, even for age agnostic at this point, right? So I think in that case we are conscious of that, and to the best that we can, as long as the creatives don't get super upset, we try to bake those into the specs. But please make sure that at the least it's a vertical format. At the least, we will negotiate with doing a 15, for instance. But it's challenging because it's not that easy to squeeze in a 30 into a 15, or let alone a 6, right? So that's where it's, we do think of creative planning as it affects media with an audience first approach, but sometimes there's just not much wiggle room because of how, I guess, the restrictions on how the storytelling of the creative is. And although we always know when the seasons start and the seasons end, there's never enough time. But there's the other side of that is, we have, for instance, there could be a tune-in spot or promo, and what we might do is on digital and social channels, we might just put a persistent tune-in message on the bottom, kind of like a lower third. And so that, it might look not as nice on linear TV, but that's where we can kind of make the tweaks for that digital social audience, where, hey, it'd be great if you saw all 15 or 30 seconds, but even if you didn't, just pay attention to the tune-in message, and it's less offensive on digital and social channels there. So lastly, I think, we are, I guess, like most companies, trying to go a little bit more younger and to future-proof ourselves in our fandom. And these are things that we have been kind of, our creative team has been incorporating kind of into the spots of, okay, not just duration and format, but things like, okay, different types of music, or kind of verbiage and scripts and such. And those are things that we all are mindful of from a media perspective of course, how does this complement the media plan, in addition to the very, I guess, painful specs we give them of shrinking a 60 down into a 6.
I wanted to just add one thing that I just thought of when you talked about that. I think the best real world example for convergent TV is QR codes. QR codes used to be something that you would see, only in one space, and now you're seeing them across linear, you're seeing them across streaming, you're seeing them at restaurants. I just think that is really the beauty of digital getting expanded out into our everyday lives, and a great example for how I've seen linear evolve to sort of look and mimic more like digital over the last couple of years.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, the pandemic was definitely good for whoever invented the QR code.
Oh yeah, it came back.
Be aware of what that thing looks like.
Yeah.
And a pro tip to anyone on that: if you are going to put a QR code on an ad, do not, make sure you don't target mobile devices. It is that is just, you're saving money on impressions. Just target bigger screens.
That is a very good point.
How are you taking a picture of a QR code when you are on the thing that takes the picture of the QR code?
There are some apps that actually ask you to do that. It's a little confusing what you're supposed to do next.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
So just in closing, as I said earlier, we did this research in November. A lot has changed, or deals have been struck since then. Apple TV is going to be airing MLS and continue to stream Major League Baseball games. We talked about YouTube and the Sunday Ticket. Even Samsung is getting into the act. Not surprisingly, they have been toying around with this for a while, but they have their own ACR technology. So they'll be doing some ad targeting. And we just bought a Samsung TV. I was very aware of all the choices I was making and getting onboarded with my new TV. So this obviously changes way faster than linear, which hadn't really changed much in 50 years. What do you think 2023 has in store for us? What do you think is going to change? What do you think should change? Some of the audience that some of the brands that we spoke to wanted to see the world go from linear first to streaming first. Somebody else said that they thought that until we have a universal view for the consumer of content, that it's still going to be a fragmented market because people still have to figure out where they're going to go to get certain pieces of content. So just wondering, like, what would you think the industry should focus on as a priority for 2023?
CK, you want to take it first?
I'll give it a go. Enhanced measurement is always going to be what would make Christmas come early for me. Again, less of a fragmented view. Also, I guess, believe it or not, still a problem that I'm hoping gets better this year and beyond is frequency management. I know back in the day, that used to be a huge issue with display advertising, but you know, avoiding a lot of those bookends when possible. And then also, I think what makes me really excited that I've seen a lot of evolution in, and I feel like we're getting close to making it a more seamless experience, is more kind of innovation towards mid to lower funnel actions on CTV and translating and I guess completing that journey from maybe, you know, a brand spot that you might then see on YouTube TV to like actually buy something without making you leave the screen and or, you know, completing your journey on a mobile phone device. So really, you know, kind of user journey synchronization in addition to just more kind of investment in middle to lower funnel actions has been really exciting to see evolve. And I feel like it's getting there on making it more of a seamless experience. And I'm excited to see how that grows. Yeah,
I can, when you said the thing about the frequency capping and in digital, I remember when I was an early Hulu adopter, and you would see one ad 7 times in a TV show. It was a terrible experience. They seem to have fixed that, but I'm not on the ad-supported version anymore, so maybe I'm not seeing it.
David.
I know. I'm supposed to watch ads. That's part of my role.
So, I mean, obviously overseeing product at Innovid and specifically leading the helm on Innovid XP, I am so excited to watch us grow. We already have a good sense of linear and connected TV, the overlap, the reach and frequency. We're expanding a lot of the capabilities we created to specifically view publisher versus publisher into streaming now into linear, and we're helping a lot of the sell side sort of figure out their total TV universe across digital, CTV, and linear versus the other players in the space. So I'm jazzed about that. From a trend standpoint, I want to see us stop being obsessed with deterministic signal. Guess what? It's dead. Apple's killing it. Chrome is killing it. Google's killing it. The obsession with perfect is coming at the cost of good. And I hope advertisers start to realize that like having all of this data isn't necessarily a good thing and doesn't necessarily make their business that much better. And ultimately, you know, it's coming at the detriment of individual consumers, which I think they're going to start fighting against. Per David's point, he was very clear about what he was agreeing to when he set up his Samsung TV. He's in this world, but I think we should expect to see more and more of that. The other thing is for advertisers that are, you know, either all in on streaming or all in on linear, I would implore them now to start just diversifying their mix, because I don't think we're going to see the death of linear. We have a saying at Innovid, TV is dead, long live TV. That's exactly it, right? Like it will continue to evolve, it will continue to change. My concern is I think advertisers are really letting the sell side kind of lead these things and define currency and define KPIs for the future. And I want media buyers to realize they hold the power of the dollar, which is the power. So they need to get involved and they need to say, I'm not going to adhere to one currency for this one publisher and switch my currency for this other publisher that I'm going to buy to get to my audience. They need to get involved and really raise their voices and, demand that there's convergence of methodologies and metrics across the ecosystem. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck, in one currency ecosystem that might not work for their business 6 months down the line. So get involved now, test and learn now, play now. There are measurement companies out there that are going to get you what you need, and it, perfect is something we're all going to strive for, but it can't come, at the cost of good is kind of my mantra these days.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting. So the 80-20 rule should apply, even though people keep striving for 100%.
Yep.
Just read something from Brian Weiser, who's now at Madison and Wall, about the TV industry. And he said, we've been predicting the end of TV for about 20 or 30 years now. And it's clearly not going away. It's shifting a little bit here and there, but there's still definitely a role for TV to play in all of our lives. Anyway, I want to thank the two of you, CK, Laura. It was really fantastic having this time with you. The insights from both you on this webinar and the report, which I encourage people to download, are really insightful in terms of where the advertising world is going with Converged TV. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Christine, David, and Laura for joining us. To get even more information on how advertisers are adapting to the world of Converged TV, scan this QR code to get a copy of our report with Ascendant. Or you could just visit us at innovid.com. See you next time.